Well, this has been a disappointing season for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I know, hot take. But let's talk about what's gone wrong with it, because there's been a lot of finger pointing going on. Well, where should we actually point the fingers? Is it the coaching staff? Is it Tom Brady is washed up? Is it the team around Brady? Well, combination of things, and let's just get into it and kind of talk about it in detail. So this chart is going to be the first one I want to talk about, as I think this is a good indicator of just, again, giving us a general idea. I'm using Pro Football Focus grades and where they ranked in PFF grades last year and this year. I know PFF's not everyone's cup of tea. I tend to think they're pretty decent, though, and it's certainly at least a tool to use and a guideline to use here, if nothing else. Because, again, worth mentioning, last year, they were tied for the most wins in football. This year, they're hanging on, barely being able to lead the division. That's the worst division maybe we've ever seen. So it has a chance to be at the very least. So let's talk about, what the difference is. And you see one glaring jump right at the top is the passing game. Tom Brady was PFF's highest graded passer in 2021. This year, the passing game has been 9th best in football. Again, is that a massive jump? No, it's not a massive jump. It's something you can live with, obviously. Oh no, only the 9th best passer in football. What a crime. But the reality is, for the Buccaneers to win a Super Bowl, they usually need Tom Brady playing at a very high level. And while it's 9th graded passing, it's actually 14th graded quarterback overall. When you feel that way, that feels like a pretty big jump, actually. You're talking about just above mediocre quarterback play from having to, the guy who, let's be honest, should have won MVP last year. That's a huge drop-off, and there's no getting around it. That's a big part of why this Buccaneers team has been worse this year. It's not the only part, though, right? That's not going to completely turn you from, competing for the number 1 seed, competing for the Super Bowl, to a below-average football team. Well, let's talk about the other aspects here. Well, first we can talk about pass blocking. That hasn't changed. Run blocking, that hasn't changed. Only a 1-spot difference in both of those. The receiving game, though, and the running game, 2 massive drop-offs as well. Some people might be surprised to see that the receiving game was only graded 12th last year, but it actually, I think that's true. I think that's about where I would put them at last year when you factor in they had a lot of injuries last season. Yes, they had Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, and Antonio Brown, but they rarely had all 3 of those guys on the field at the same time. Brown only played a handful of games that year and then eventually walked off the field. Godwin, went down with an ACL, and Mike Evans, he always seems like he's playing banged up. However, it's definitely been a far cry from what we've seen this year, as, again, PFF has them as nearly a bottom 10 receiving core this season. And, again, part of it is, like, Julio Jones has been a fine role player, but he's also been in and out of the lineup. He hasn't stayed healthy. Chris Godwin, another guy who hasn't stayed healthy, and, took him a while to kind of find his footing, although it does seem like he's all the way back. Mike Evans, another guy who just hasn't had his best season, and then Russell Gage has been a massive disappointment, and he's gotten a decent amount of playing time. So, not to mention, I don't know what happened to Scotty Miller. I felt like he was going to be a piece for this team, and that just didn't work out. So when you factor on the running backs haven't ran great routes this season on top of it, you just, bottom 11, does that feel a bit harsh? Yeah, it feels a bit harsh to me. But again, there's a lot of good receiving cores out there. That's the other thing is you think about like a mediocre receiving core now would be like a great receiving core, 15 years ago. It's just, there's a lot of good receivers out there. The running game, Fournette's been very bad this season. Fournette hasn't been good. Rachaad White's been the better player, I would say, as a whole, but he's still, he hasn't been amazing either. Like, he's been solid. He's been worth the mid-round draft pick, but, you look at his grades and stuff, it hasn't been spectacular there either. So they were actually a good running team last year. Fournette was good last year. He had, there's a reason why he got paid. It's because he was a good running back last year, but just doesn't seem like maybe he doesn't have it anymore, or maybe he just needs to get back to the playoffs and then he'll get it again. I don't know. Heading over to the defense, it's dropped off a little bit as well. It's not been a massive drop-off, but you have seen slight drop-offs in each category. Part of this has been injuries, and part of this has been, it's not signing some guys, you could argue. But, the run defense and pass rush has dropped off. Pass rush wasn't great last year, is a little bit worse this year. Losing Shaq Barrett, obviously, is going to really hurt with that. The thing about the Buccaneers pass rush was they were entirely dependent on one guy in Shaq Barrett, and then that one guy gets hurt, so then, okay, yeah, it's going to be tough for you in that spot. But again, coverage has still been good, and when the coverage is good, your team's probably going to play well. It's really amazing that their coverage was so good last year, given all the injuries injuries they had, taken a small step back, but they've been injured this year as well. So, if they get healthy, you feel pretty good they can still be solid. The defense has not been the massive issue, but in terms of the talent drop-off, the reality is the offensive line's actually not really been worse this year than it has last year, which is interesting to think about. The main thing has been some of the receivers taking steps back, losing Antonio Brown for the amount of, he didn't play a lot last year, but still losing that definitely does hurt. The running game taking a massive step back definitely hurts, and it's not a run blocking situation like people might think it is. And then Brady taking a massive step back. That's kind of the main issues if you are a fan of PFF grades, but there's more to it than just that, right? Let's talk about coaching. I want to talk about the Tampa Bay pass frequency over expected, but what I'm going to be doing here is I am not just going to be talking about overall how often do they throw more than the average team. And there's a reason why I'm not doing that. It's because the reality is, yes, they have been throwing a decent amount this season, but that's because they've been down a decent amount and have had to abandon the run in specific games. So what I'm doing here is this is only counting when their win expectancy was from 30% to 70%. So, if they have a 90% chance to win or 90% chance to lose, we're just not counting that play because then your game plan is going to change. This is what they do when it's just normal football, just going out trying to score points. They're actually right dead even. They do not throw the ball over expected at all. It's 0% over expected. So they're an average team at running the football, which is surprising given the fact that they are the 30th, everyone talks about them as one of the worst run offenses of all time, that they're still a team that likes to run the ball a lot. You see that on first down and 10, they run the ball a lot on first down and 10. We noticed 4% more than expected. On 3rd and 1 or 2, they run the ball 12% more than expected, as in throw the ball 12% less than expected, which is insane that they do it that frequently. Again, especially when you have a guy like Tom Brady, who's sort of known for his short passing situations. Why are you running the ball so frequently? And they've been bad in those spots, so that's clearly an issue for sure. And then, they do throw the ball more than expected on second down for whatever reason. Probably because they run the ball so much on first, they then throw the ball on second. That's an interesting thing. But as a whole, this is a team that does not frequently throw the ball. They run the ball a decent amount. But you might be wondering, wait a second, didn't they kind of run a lot on first downs last year too? Well, not really. Last year, they were actually 5% pass over expected on all plays, that's pretty significant. That's on the top of the league at that point. And again, this is doing the only one to win probability is 30 to 70%. And they actually, what it had a reputation of running the ball every first down and 10, they actually still threw the ball a little bit more than the average team does in that spot, but probably just given how often they threw the ball in every other scenario, that's kind of what they did. Now, worth noting, they still ran the ball a lot on 3rd down and 1 and 2. That's something that they've done, but in every other category, they threw the ball above expected, sometimes well above expected. I mean, you look at how often on second downs they threw the ball over expected. They were always throwing on second downs. It felt like that's part of why they were, part of why they were such a good offense is they threw the ball a lot more. So, and again, maybe it's because Brady hasn't played as well this year. You're not throwing the ball as much, but maybe Brady's not playing as well this year because he's not throwing the ball as much. Maybe it helps him to get more reps. Maybe he's one of those guys that give him more opportunities. He plays better. It's possible. I don't know. I can't say for certain, but it seems like those are the main 3 issues I would say with this team is they're worse coached. Brady has taken a pretty sizable step backwards, and the receiving core has not played as well this year, among some other smaller issues here and there. That's been the difference in a championship contending team and a mediocre team. The hope for Tampa Bay is that if Brady can turn it on come postseason time, which I'm not going to count out, and if Mike Evans and Chris Godwin can turn it on come postseason time, if Julio Jones can turn it on come postseason time, there is still maybe hope that last year Buccaneers team can come back. But again, you could probably say that with any team that's trying to make the playoffs, right? That there's still a way that it could happen. Not going to hold my breath, but we'll see what happens. That's what I think about all of this. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.